Hello, I hope you're all doing well. So, about a month ago I bought the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro, a very odd shaped camera, and I've been on a mission. I want to rig it up to be the absolute best cinema camera it can be, and today we're going to be looking at the power solution I found. So, let's go ahead and jump in. So before we get into it, I want to let you guys know where I'm coming from. My perspective is that of a professional camera assistant, because that's what I do alongside with cinematography. So that's really going to be where my head's at. So I'm not necessarily looking for the most compact, unique solution. I'm looking for a flexible solution that could work perhaps on multiple camera packages. I also find when looking for flexible camera solutions, when it comes time to sell the gear after it's kind of fallen somewhat out of favor, or at least the camera package itself has fallen out of favor, it's not that hard to get rid of, and the secondhand market is much bigger. So let's break it down. What am I trying to solve with this battery solution? Well, really it comes down to two main issues. The lackluster battery life of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. It's kind of been notorious the entire life of the whole line of cameras, and they have improved it slightly with the 6K Pro, so that is definitely a good thing. But it is still pretty lackluster, especially compared to some Sony cameras, even Canon. So it is definitely something we want to improve on. Now, what's the second issue? Well, that comes down to the odd form factor. I actually ended up making an entire video on that, so if you want to see that, it's up here, I think. I always get the wrong side, but I believe it's up here. And basically, it's overly tall, it's overly wide, and it's just a very unconventional form factor when most cinema cameras are traditionally longer, and therefore far more ergonomic, especially when it comes to specific camera rigs on set, whether it's gimbals or easy rigs or steady cams. So let's go over the few solutions I found. The first one I looked at was the Undermount battery. Now, I actually pretty quickly moved on from this one, despite it being a decent capacity and decent enough looking, because it ends up making the camera even taller. So we have the battery grip from Blackmagic. That makes it tall and, well, it's already awkwardly wide, so it makes it awkwardly tall on top of that. Well, the Undermount batteries do basically the same thing, but they're slightly larger, which helps with battery life, certainly. But as I already said, it ends up making the camera weirdly tall, and the battery itself is somewhat of a nightmare to rig up. There are some custom rigs that you can use on the Blackmagic to make it all work together, and certainly some people have found some great success in that, but that's definitely one of the things I'm trying to avoid, trying to be flexible. So the next thing I looked at were grip-mounted batteries, and these are actually a pretty good option overall. Tilta makes a really good one that snaps onto its camera cage. Although the camera cage hasn't come out for the 6K Pro yet as of recording this video, we're hoping to see it very soon, but the handle itself is a little chunky and honestly makes the camera almost obscenely wide. So at least rigging wise for me, I'm trying to avoid it being overly wide. Some people love it. I'm just not a huge fan of that kind of thing. But hey, if it interests you, go pick one up. Next, I actually looked at a battery solution I already have, which is basically a rear-mounted V-mount battery plate that cannot move, but can slide back and forth on the rails of the camera itself, which is nice. It's definitely flexible. It uses professional industry standard gear, and it supplies a ton of battery life. So you might be asking, okay, well, this sounds like a great solution. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that the battery mount itself can't tilt backward and forward. So basically it'll block the screen, and if you have shorter rails, you'll end up with it really close to the screen, and then you'll have to like move it back to look at the screen and move it back forward. It's a whole thing. You can do it. It definitely makes the camera more ergonomic. It provides like a nice little stock to rest on your shoulder if you want to, but it is kind of a weird thing, especially when so many of the menus are on the screen itself. Maybe a good solution if you have the port keys monitor, which allows you to Bluetooth connect up to the camera and project the menu into an external monitor. But again, if you don't have that specific monitor, maybe something to avoid. And finally, I found a rear-mounted V-mount battery plate that can actually swivel, so it can angle back and forward, which is almost exactly what I'm looking for. It can tilt forward when you want to have the rig in a compact state, and it can tilt backward when you want to access the screen, the controls, all of that. I actually found a bonus, which was when I have it on my easy rig, I can end up rebalancing the camera simply by taking the battery back and forward and finding the perfect balance place, even if I'm trying to get specific angles. So if I want it to tilt down more, I can tilt the battery in more and it'll shift the center of gravity of the camera forward and actually naturally tilt it down for me, which is a really nice thing. So I don't have to go ahead and hold it in a specific position. The camera will automatically do it. Now, next we'll go over which specific swiveling V-mount battery plate I went with. But first, if you find this video helpful, consider giving the video a like. It really helps me out. If you want to see more like this in the future, consider subscribing. And if not, that dislike button works extra well if you hit it twice. And now the grand reveal, which swiveling V-mount battery plate did I end up going with? Well, I actually chose a rather expensive model with the Tilta universal battery plate. Now it can actually be had in a gold mount or V-mount, which is nice. Has a ton of connector options, swivels, like I already said, and actually has an SDI splitter. So when I use it on more expensive camera packages, I can end up splitting the SDI signal, whether I want to go to a teardeck or a monitor. So it's a great option to have. It's very flexible, lots of DTAP or PTAP ports, and it has some LEMO connectors on the top, which are also very helpful. So there are actually several reasons why I ended up going with the Tilta. One being the fantastic build quality. Tilta, at least in my opinion, tends to make pretty good quality gear, especially for the price. Their machining quality is actually very high compared to a lot of the cheaper competitors, and overall I knew they were going to make a good swivel mechanism so that it would be able to hold it back, hold it forward without me worrying about it vibrating or introducing extra vibrations into the camera rig itself. And they also use a very high quality battery plate, the IDX battery plates, which are known for very good tolerances. I know on previous battery plates I've had, sometimes you can kind of pick up the battery and it disconnects the entire camera, which kind of really defeats the purpose of trying to extend the battery, trying to make things more reliable. If you can just kind of put it on your shoulder and it lifts the battery up enough and it disconnects, that's really not great. So I was really trying to avoid a lot of the cheaper quality that you see on a lot of the lower end battery mounting plates. And on top of that, the abundance of professional connectors really helps me out. It could prevent me from needing an additional block on top of the camera to add splitters and different things. So that's another bonus. And finally, it doesn't have those annoying barrel connectors, at least in my opinion. Every time I seem to have a barrel connector that's not necessarily a locking barrels, they're usually okay. If it doesn't have a locking part, for me at least, it tends to pull out or it tends to get disconnected or be unreliable. So I want to try to avoid that as much as I can. So that's why for me the math added up for me to purchase this more expensive plate. Now, being that the plate is so expensive, I did want to mention one drawback, and that is that the battery plate itself doesn't actually have an off switch. Now, I know that some people complain that the off switch accidentally gets switched, and that can definitely be a problem. But I think to solve it, if they just recessed the switch itself, it would be completely fine, and it would prevent phantom drain. So unfortunately, this product does have some battery drain when the camera is off, so try not to store batteries on it if you end up picking one up. But I really haven't found it to be too bad. However, if you're looking for cheaper options, I would look for that IDX battery plate on different actual mounts. So I believe Smallrig actually has a swiveling battery mount with an IDX plate on it. So you get all of the benefits of the reliability of the IDX plate and the good tolerances without having to deal with the cheap quality. Now keep in mind that's still over $100, so not the best, but you can usually find stuff on Amazon or B&H. Just make sure to read the reviews because some of it can be a little dubious sometimes. Alright guys, and that's the battery solution that works best for me. If you have a different solution, I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like is very much appreciated. Subscribe if you want to see future videos like these. And as always, I hope you learned something. Whether it's my perspective or the information on the technology itself, I hope you can walk away with something useful. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.